Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hello, and welcome to a new month and a new show. We're heading into October and the final quarter of the year. Now, the first few weeks of October have some of the most technically challenging astrology of 2023, a lot of which has to do with the South Node, which is a contributing factor to the eclipse, as well as a number of other astrological aspects that are forming. Now, I did talk a lot about the South Node in the previous episode, episode number 14, so that would be a good episode to review if you want to recap. Looking at this week, the week starting September 30th, which really is the first week of October, the astrological highlights include Mars conjunct the South Node. So I am going to touch a little bit on that specific aspect today. I'm also taking a look at Mercury, the planet of communication, which is going to be changing signs and heading into Libra. Before we get into that, I wanted to mention the special bundle offer available this month for my entire astrology training program. If you want to learn astrology but feel overwhelmed or confused by where to start or how to get going, then you're going to love my astrology training program. I've created a structured learning experience that guides you through everything you need to know to interpret a birth chart and provide astrology forecasts. Through the astrology training program, I walk you through essential topics like signs, houses, and planets. I explain and guide you through aspects, what an aspect is, how to interpret it, and help you develop your skills with chart interpretation. Next, I step you through everything you need to know to master timing and predictive astrology. And by the end of my full astrology training program, you'll be able to interpret a birth chart and make astrology predictions. You can use astrology for yourself, for your friends and family. You'll even be able to set up your own business with astrology if that's something you want to do. Right now, you can save more than $300 on your registration to the Kelly's Astrology training program. Pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com, for details and to sign up. I hope to see you in class. So, back to this week's astrology. Mars is going to join the South Node in Libra midweek. That'll be Wednesday, October 4th for most locations. It'll be Thursday, October 5th if you're in Australia. So midweek, Mars conjunct the South Node. And this aspect is definitely one of those lower energy, lower motivation aspects. It might see you second guessing choices or wondering whether you're really doing the right things, whether your energy and time and attention is going towards things that are worthwhile. And those questions, even though they can feel unsettling and leave you with some doubts, they can be really insightful to consider, even if you're a little bit unsure for a day or two while you're reflecting. It may be that there are ways for you to focus your energy and your time and your attention differently. Maybe the reality is that you are expending a huge amount of energy on a task or a project or a partnership that's become draining or exhausting for you. Maybe there are different goals or projects that you would rather be putting your time and energy into. So with this Mars South Node, it might draw your attention to something that's not working really well, an area of your life that's become more draining or depleting, it's become more stressful or difficult than anything else. So this theme of questioning what might not be working and then figuring out how to release or clear or to kind of go through some sort of separation may be an important part of life this week. We know the South Node is about emptying things out, and it provides clues to areas of our life that may be more exhausting than they are nourishing. So with Mars on the South Node, so Mars is sort of the planet that's in this state of being reduced or being depleted. And Mars has got that kind of reduced capability interpretive piece for two reasons right now, due to its sign placement in Libra and due to its conjunction with the South Node. So it's a sign placement thing, and an aspect thing. It's the combination of the two. So with Mars in this reduced kind of low functioning state, we might say, it might also mean that you're noticing some things about what it is that you want to fight about. So you might notice that you're no longer willing to fight or argue about the same old things. You might find that you've lost that kind of feisty, hard-headed quality, or that you're questioning why you're involved in the disagreements that you're involved in. It feels like this Mars South Node aspect might be a good time to lay down the sword, to walk away from a particular fight or battle that you've been engaged in. Now, Mars does meet the South Node every 2 years, so this is not a new energy, but since it only happens every couple of years, it's also not an energy that we might be super familiar with because we're only experiencing it every couple of years or so. The last time that Mars joined the South Node was in December of 2021, when Mars and the South Node were both in Sagittarius. Before that, we're looking at February of 2020, when Mars and the South Node met in Capricorn. And then going back even further, we're looking at the middle part of 2018, when Mars and the South Node were in Aquarius together. So this week, with Mars on the South Node for the first time in nearly 2 years, it really is a different and kind of unique kind of week. It might mean that this week brings some awareness around shifting priorities. Maybe you're aware that your passions and the initiatives that you want to pursue are different from what they have been in the past. It might even be a week that brings some new insight or awareness about the kinds of battles that you're willing to fight. It might also bring some clarity on a battle or a disagreement that you'd rather not expend any more energy on. You know, sometimes you get locked into a pattern with a person. It could be someone in your personal life, in your professional life, a family member, a friend, and it feels like you're just constantly circling the fact that you have really strong but different opinions about this one thing. And sometimes, we're kind of energized by that disagreement, and there's a lot of enthusiasm to keep that debate and that sort of discussion going. And then there are other times we sort of get to the point where it's like, I'm just spending so much energy on this. We're making no headway. Nothing's changing. I don't know if it's a worthwhile use of my energy to keep, fighting this battle. And so there is something with this Mars South Node, particularly in Libra. Libra is a sign that indicates relationship settings and that idea of interpersonal dynamics. And with Mars on the South Node, there's this sort of rethinking around who or what we're willing to fight about. There are certain people that we care enough about the connection with them that we're willing to fight and thrash things out. And when we lose that desire to fight with someone, it can be a clue that some of the energetic charge of connection or affection or attraction between the two of you has really reduced. And so with Mars on the South Node, sometimes it's cluing our conscious mind in to an absence or a lack or an emptiness that might have been building for a while that we hadn't actually cottoned on to yet. So that's what I mean by this week might bring some awareness or insight about those different interpersonal dynamics that maybe just aren't there in the way they used to be. So that's a little bit about Mars on the South Node, and I think that is sort of the overarching astrological theme for the week. So we just want to manage our own expectations, knowing that we might be a little low motivation, low energy. We might be questioning some really important, tender, vulnerable things. And that's happening Wednesday, Thursday. And so, we don't want to kind of necessarily have major events going on. We don't want to push ourselves too much, knowing that we've got a little bit of that signature of emptying out or depletion coming through this week. On another note, we've also got Mercury changing signs this week, and that shift is happening midweek as well. So Wednesday, if you're in Canada and the US, Thursday, if you're in Australia, the UK and Europe. So Mercury has wrapped up its time in Virgo and is moving into Libra. Now, what that kind of means midweek is there's also a mental shift in focus this week. So the kinds of things that you're curious about, and the ways in which you might want to express your ideas or your thoughts or your feelings, there's a bit of a different energy coming in midweek than what we've been dealing with. So I think about Mercury changing signs sometimes as like a mental shift or a shift in the way I want to handle communications. So the way I deal with like my inbox, for instance, or correspondence is a little different when we're dealing with Mercury in different places. Of course, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the way that Mercury in Libra operates so you'll have a sense of what kind of style to lean towards. But just before I do that, an important note about Mercury changing signs this first week of October. Mercury has actually been in Virgo since late July. And so this sign change of Mercury, October 4th or 5th, is really the first time Mercury has changed signs in more than 2 months. And that's an unusually long time for Mercury to be in one place, defined by one style of operating. At his regular speed, Mercury spends between 2 and 3 weeks in a zodiac sign. But when Mercury goes into its retrograde situation, Mercury will often spend 2 to 2.5 months in one zodiac sign. So, of course, we're coming off the tail end of Mercury in Virgo, which included that Mercury retrograde in Virgo. And so one way to interpret Mercury changing signs this week is that you may have been deeply curious and intensely analytical about really core topics, the topics of the Virgo part of the chart for you personally. Could be 10th house of career if you've got Virgo on the midheaven. It might be third house of siblings or contracts if you have Virgo on the third house, for instance. And so you've been so focused, like deep analytical assessment, investigation, organization to do with Mercury and Virgo. Hopefully, you've really organized that part of your chart and your life. You may have sorted things out. You may have done a big kind of spring clean or declutter. And now we're setting that down. And so there's probably been some topics or themes that you've been kind of mentally churning over, ruminating on, obsessed with talking about all through August and September. And now we're going to be shifting our mind. Our mind is going to shift its attention to a different way of operating and a different set of topics. So with all of that activity with Mercury spending so long in Virgo, you've really moved things around. You've made some adjustments. You've probably got things a bit more organized and simplified. And now you can kind of step back and let that Virgo part of your chart or life settle down. And you're going to turn even more of your attention towards the Libra part of your chart. So Mercury is going to be in Libra from October 4th to the 22nd. And so the topics of the Libra house in your chart will be a huge focus during this period of time. And that's partly because Mercury's there, but it's also because Mercury is joined by the Sun in Libra, Mars in Libra, and the South Node in Libra. We're also going to have a solar eclipse in Libra in the time frame that Mercury is in Libra. So the Libra house and the people or topics associated with the Libra part of your chart. If you have Libra on the 4th house or the IC, home, family, living situation, parents, siblings, kids, they will be the topics for you. If you have Libra on the 6th house in your chart, it's going to be health, pets, daily routines, co-workers. So think about the Libra part of your chart. It is the most active part of your chart right now. And Mercury is just kind of joining that planetary party. Now, this Libra part of your chart is top priority right now, but it might be an area of your life that's a bit chaotic. Maybe it's a bit out of control. Maybe your regular rhythms and routines have been interrupted or disrupted. It's definitely an area of your life where you're considering a wide range of options and changes. You're questioning a lot of things. And Mercury coming into Libra can really help with the articulation, with the expression, and with the understanding of these deeper shifts and changes that are happening. So Mercury in Libra can help with sort of putting into words some of the things that have been churning inside you over the past few weeks. And that's going to help bring a little bit of clarity about this uncertain, unsettled part of your life. It's also going to help you maybe articulate or talk about some of the tender or vulnerable topics, some of the things that you're a little bit afraid about or a little bit worried about. And, we all have fears and worries that pop up at different points in time. Astrologically, when we see things like Mars in an air sign plus the South Node, I can really see this sort of disturbed ethers or disturbed mental energy with that. And so I imagine each of us has a particularly poignant worry or fear that we're very vulnerable about. And that's kind of aroused this week by the Mars South Node. And then Mercury comes into Libra and can help us give voice to that fear. And it really is this funny thing about the way the human psyche works, that when we talk about or write down the fears and worries we have, we actually alleviate some of the burden of that kind of anxiousness. And it's a bit simplistic to say, journaling or talking fixes anxiety and worry, but it certainly helps reduce the intensity of that kind of internal state of panic or worry or concern that you might be having. Mercury in Libra is a little bit more externally oriented than Mercury in Virgo was, and it's going to help each of us seek out people or opportunities to talk through what's inside of us, what's weighing on our minds and hearts, and that's going to be healing and helpful. When I have a look at the charts of people who have Mercury in Libra, you really see a lot of notable politicians, writers, journalists, diplomats. There's that mix of creativity. There's that mix of, heads of state, negotiation. It's a very kind of great placement you could imagine for lawyers and people who are really getting into the facts of things. So Mercury in Libra is really helpful for negotiation and debate and discussion. It emphasizes diplomacy and tact. And so what we kind of get with Mercury in Libra is this opportunity to talk about some tricky subjects, but tactfully and with discretion. So with Mercury in Libra, we're really looking to use language to create alliances or talk through information and facts. And so sharing those ideas, airing them out, like airing out what's inside your mind, is going to be really important with Mercury in Libra. Mercury in Libra is also a great placement for those conversations where you have to navigate different priorities and competing needs and desires. So it really helps you engage in that to and fro, that back and forth. Where can we get to a place of agreement or compromise that feels reasonable and fair for everybody involved? Mercury in Libra is, of course, Mercury in a sign ruled by Venus. So we do have themes of kind of sweet words, pleasant ideas. Whenever I see Mercury in a sign ruled by Venus, you know that there's going to be that kind of moreish, sweet, palatable quality to ideas and conversations and possibilities. And that can really help kind of ease or smooth the discussions that need to be had. It doesn't mean everything is easy and we're talking about, sunshine and roses and puppies and kittens and things, but it does mean that we can sort of have a little bit of grace and ease as we find our way through, more tender or touching or uncomfortable subject matter. So Mercury in Libra is really helpful for delicately discussing subjects which might be controversial or contentious, or, when you're in that place where you're trying to navigate a major difference of opinions with someone who's important to you. So Mercury in Libra keeps us involved in the conversation. It keeps us coming back to the discussion until we can find a way to come to some of those agreement points so that we can have a sense of how do we go forward from here. Now, Mercury in Libra is also arguing on behalf of fairness, of justice. It's arguing on behalf of peace and equity. And so whatever it is that you find yourself ready to discuss and talk about over the next few weeks, Mercury in Libra is really going to help you do so tactfully, with discretion, with eloquence, but with a sense of kind of respect for everybody else involved in the discussion. So pulling all of that together, we've got Mars in an air sign, and Mars has been in Libra for a number of weeks, but it's active this week because we've got an aspect with Mars in Libra. And of course, we're getting Mercury come into Libra. So we've got a little bit more activity around an air sign, the air sign of Libra. And so with that emphasis, this week is sure to bring lots of thoughts, lots of conversations, and even some really important, poignant encounters. And this is going to be a thought-provoking week. It's perhaps going to be a week where an idea or an interaction that you have prompts some change, helps you understand a shift that you're ready to make, or maybe that you're even overdue to make. And this is one of those weeks where I want you to go with the shifts and changes that come up. We don't want to fight the transition that emerges under a South Node week, because we know it's a time for releasing, for letting go, for clearing. Maybe we're not sure what's next yet, but that's okay. This is the week not necessarily for figuring out what's next, but for clearing out things that are no longer sort of sustainable or nourishing for us. So this really is a week that is ideal for letting go of the old and maybe getting curious about differences, different points of view, different perspectives. And you could have some open curiosity about, with this space, what might emerge without having that need to know just yet. So thank you so much for joining me this week. When I was prepping today's session, I realized it's been a full quarter, full 3 months since I started the podcast. And I really wanted to take a moment here to thank you so much for listening, for subscribing, for dropping those reviews, and for sharing about the podcast with your friends and fellow astrology lovers. I'm so grateful to be here on this journey with you. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll be back, of course, with more next week. Until then, take care.